When did the full weight of the gravity of this pandemic set in for you? When I got off the train in Penn Station, and it was a ghost town. It was absolutely terrifying considering Penn Station is meant to be a central location for people. I'd never been to Penn Station at all hours of the day and night, and there wasn't a bunch of people running full trains, eating, shopping, etc. Manhattan was also eerily quiet beyond some sirens. I saw videos of Chicago during lockdown that were so incredibly eerie in their silence and lack of motion. It was almost like I'm Legend, without nature taking over. I live in New York City, so seeing images of places like Times Square virtually empty, relatively, was something else. When my boss called me into her office and asked me whether I could work from home, as a precaution, so that the entire department would not be paralyzed if somebody were infected. This was in March, I believe. I'm still working from home. We are on a remote setting, just for the next few weeks. Yup, my work keeps doing this too. Since March I have spent some time in the office, but it's been mostly from home. March to May at home, June in the office, July to August at home, September in office, October was a split, unrelated to COVID, and since the end of October I've been at home again. It really sucks, because I have a few programs that I'd like to get off the ground, but I simply can't. I'm in software development and our department is actually some 20% more productive now, lol. I work in support and we're not only far more productive, but also more collaborative. It's actually super interesting. CEO is completely against working from home at all though. We're a family. Always hated that shit. I'm here for the money. My wife may never see her 94-year-old mother in person again as she lives in a city far away. Oh, that is so depressing. I feel so bad for your wife. It must be really hard. When a bunch of billionaires decided to willingly suspend the NBA season. People that process that much money don't just decide to halt ticket sales for their cash cow sports franchises without a damn good reason. I didn't exactly process it that way, but the NBA being cancelled on March 11th is what did it for me as well. Walmart enforcing masks, where our governors won't, is where I thought about the money. For me it's when the whole thing kicked off, went to food for less and almost everything was gone. This was at the start of the water/toilet paper craze. I'll never forget this random old guy next to me say we will get past this and everything will go back to normal. Probably one of the most real moments in my life. Yeah. That first trip to the store after they announced lockdowns was genuinely surreal. Bare shelves front to back, and my partner muttering in my ear that he's glad I stocked up on canned and frozen foods in February. One of the weirdest things I will always remember, though, is walking into the soup aisle and everything was gone. Everything except asparagus and pea soup. Probably 60 cans of it and a shade in the middle of entirely bare shelves. Cracked me up when I really needed it. Really makes you look at zombie apocalypse style movies with super full grocery stores and shake your head. When they cancelled the Olympics. So much have happened this year. I totally forgot about this. I'm not even a sports guy, but the Olympics is sacred. Pretty much from the get-go, I had just gotten to an island in the middle of the Pacific from being on a boat for a while. Borders were closing on us fast. The local government wanted all outsiders out now, and we had to make very important decisions very quickly. It felt like choosing your starting position in a zombie apocalypse or dystopian future game. But I'm a grad student studying physics. I was scheduled to go to the American Physical Society's March meeting to present my research. Starting March 1st, it's the biggest conference in the world of professional physicists. 10,000 people from all over the world go every year. It's a great opportunity to get noticed and see where your field is going. I had been nervously monitoring the situation for a few weeks, worrying about this new disease. They put out several notices that they were still going forward with the meeting, right up until 3 days before it, when they abruptly cancelled it. I breathed a sigh of relief, even though I never got the cost of the plane ticket back. A month later I realized that the hypothesis I was going to present was utterly wrong, and have completely revised that section of my thesis to reflect our new understanding. Dodged 2 bullets there. This is the first reply in this entire thread to make me chuckle. The first time I had to use an unapproved app on my phone so a family could say goodbye to my patient. It was emotional and more distant than it should have been. Marge. Thank you for doing this. My dad died last week, alone in the hospital, and we were unable to visit, and they had no way of doing a video call. We never got to say goodbye. Early April, when a former colleague who was 28 and perfectly healthy otherwise caught it and died. That's when I realized that it wasn't just bad flu. My Phil has it. He's a 62 years old type 2 diabetic alcoholic and former smoker. I told my 4 years old that Papa has the sickness, but he's gonna be fine. But I'm not sure he will be. My son has already been to 5 funerals in the past 2.5 years. I really don't want it to be 6. Had the talk with my 5-year-old about my dad, and the 40B person we have lost to it this year didn't make it through the virus. I've had this conversation far too many times this year. The sad part is he understands exactly what death is and its permanence. At 5. Such a shitty conversation. Sorry you had to go through that. Early on, some experts were saying it wouldn't end until 70% or the population gets infected or vaccinated. That's when it hit home for me. I was like, wow, that's a big number. Very early in the year, I teach Chinese kids on the internet. They were getting locked down and telling me they hadn't left the house in weeks, so I started following the story. I was the crazy guy in like January, telling everyone this was coming and they better pay attention, and it wasn't just going to be a 2-week shutdown. Told you so. I have a couple of Chinese colleagues who were following the story very closely and were taking it extremely seriously as early as January. I actually took a cruise in mid-February, and my Chinese office mate was super anxious that I was going to come back from the cruise infected and get her sick. At that point we were all kinda rolling our eyes at here. But within 3 weeks, our whole company had gone 100% remote. I was out camping with my friends on spring break. On day 3, I get the notification that 2 NBA players, Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, have contracted the coronavirus. 5 minutes after this announcement, the NBA announced the suspension of the season. My friends and I proceeded to watch the dominoes fall as everything began shutting down / postponing. And then we get an extra week of spring break, and then one of the shittiest educations we all have ever received. I think March 11th, 2020 may end up being in a lot of American history textbooks in the future. I remember being out of state for a funeral, watching CNN with my folks, and watching the world as I knew it rapidly fold in on itself. When I went up to the funeral, I flew and nothing much seemed different. I drove back, all 14 hours. When I was stuck in a city where I knew no one, and I was pacing my studio apartment talking to myself, just to hear the sounds live humans make. OMG, I was reading my emails out loud to myself during the workday, and it took me a while to realize it was because I have zero human interaction day to day. Now I watch TV while I work and it helps. This is a really lonely time to live alone. Today, my housemate was going to spend his Christmas vacation with his girlfriend in another state. He just told me last week, and he was really excited about it. Today he came into my room and said he wasn't going. I asked him if they had a fight. He said no. She had just died of COVID. She didn't even have it last week. I just feel numb. How could this happen so fast? About 25 pounds ago. Thank you for making me laugh amidst all of these sad but valid comments. I assume you gained 25 pounds? Lol. My boss doesn't give a duck about his workers. They talked a big game of keeping us safe, but his wife has confirmed corona, and he's still here walking around the shop without a mask. Some of us are on the verge of quitting. I'm not sure where you are, but I'm pretty sure that contravenes some kind of health order. Contact your province's / state's covered authority and report him. He'll get a nasty fine. At the very least, depending on state, his business license can be suspended or completed revoked. I had already lost my job before the lockdown happened. The one I just before the lockdown was for a bar which got shut down at the end of March. I have a mortgage and a school-aged child and had just separated from my wife after being together for 21 years. For the first time I was truly on my own with an eye-watering amount of debt and no idea what to do. So what did you do? Sounds brutal. I ended up working for the catering department of a really nice old folks home. I thought it would be terrible, but old people are really nice, and the people who end up looking after your parents and grandparents are for the most part really kind and selfless. Having now seen end-of-life care and the day-to-day of dealing with dementia, I'm humbled to have been given such a job. I have guaranteed hours, and I'm COVID tested weekly. Once the vaccine rolls out, I will probably be one of the first to get it. In July I had a 30-year-old co-worker, younger than me, at about the same level of health as I'm, die from COVID. I wasn't close enough to him to visit him in the hospital or anything, and I just assumed that, even though he was in the ICU, that he was going to get better. When I found out he lost the fight, it brought my own mortality into a spotlight. The worst part? Talking to my mom about it and having her ask what else was wrong with him. Because people aren't actually dying from COVID. Doctors are lying on the death certificates. Apostrophe. Right. Doctors lying about it. Because they make more money that way, right? In March, when the WHO, World Health Organization, announced it as a pandemic, I thought to myself, oh shit, this is really serious. I'm baffled at how people treat it now though. With millions of cases and nearly 1.5 million recorded deaths total. Stay safe, please. It's crazy to me. We took it more serious when there were less cases. I understand the world can't exactly come to a 100% stop, but the amount of things reopening because people are bored of being at home is insane. Fatigue. We can do anything for a short time, but doing something so drastically different for so long is wearying. Hypervigilance is difficult even for those who receive special training for it. When I hadn't been anywhere in so long, I finally had to drive to run an errand, and it felt like I was doing something illegal. Same. I basically forgot how to drive. It was so weird. The child that died in Wuhan because his parents had been infected and moved to ICU and no one could feed him because they were too terrified to go into a COVID hotspot. I felt like I was thrown back to the Black Death. When Disneyland shut down. Disney has the political clout to evade governmental shutdown orders. California Governor Gavin Newsom made a special exemption for them in his lockdown order, and yet the board of directors decided to shut down the park anyway. This was it for me, too, and I had to scroll way too far to find it. Disneyland and Disney World shutting down. That just doesn't happen. Except for hurricanes. I believe the last time Disney World closed was 9/11. Yes, came here to say this. The fact that it closed at all was unheard of to me, and then it stayed closed for months and months and months. I just never could have imagined a scenario in which that would happen. When grocery stores first started with all the safety measures and whole aisles were empty or only had a couple dented cans. When I was called essential as a grocery worker and understood my place in the world. I appreciate everything you do for us. Thank you. I had a few times. One, when this went from feeling like I was scamming the system by being able to work from home to honing my working from home skills because this is not a 1-month vacation at home. 2, when I realized it's been so long since I have seen some of my friends that we have actually grown apart. 3, it went from raising a baby and a toddler during a pandemic to raising 2 toddlers during the pandemic. 4, watching movies I have seen a million times to only be envious of their gathering together, all the while wondering when the next time will be that I can do that. 5, when I looked at my hours logged into Call of Duty and was like, dude, my high school self would be envious of my playtime. Each of these had a different type of resignation for me in which I really noticed the severity of the pandemic. When my father-in-law died and we couldn't be there to hold him as he died. Me too. My wife and her dad were estranged for the past 20 years and we heard he might be softening. And then COVID took him. When China locked down Wuhan, if the Chinese government, not known for caring about human life, thought locking up 5 million people was the better option, then COVID was going to be bad. Edit. Wuhan has a population of 10 meters. Yup. This. I had not heard of Wuhan before. Looked it up and learned that it is much bigger than New York City. The thought of locking down New York City is staggering. And China did just that to Wuhan. Fuck. I was talking to my friend last month about the pandemic and she reminded me that I kept bringing up Wuhan and that cruise ship in Japan with all the people quarantined in December/January. She said only for that she'd have though it would be like Ebola. Sad but not important. She'd have thought it would be like Ebola. Sad but not important. I remember talking with my friend in late December/early January wondering if it was as bad as the media was making it out to be, or if they were overhyping it because fear sells. I remember saying in like December that the media was just hyping this up to scare the shit out of people, and that the world won't end due to COVID. Boy was I wrong. I think we all were. I had every expectation of just not hearing about it one day and that would be it. After all, the media was following the formula from H1N1, bird flu, Zika, and Ebola, while defiantly sad they all ended up being nothing really. When you go for toilet paper shopping and find empty aisles. When I was up in Montana, one of the semi-trucks transporting all the bread for the town flipped on the icy highway and we were straight out of bread and TP when the whole thing started. When everything in the country had to close. It felt like the world just stood still. Every workplace closed. All shops closed. Restaurants closed. Fast food closed. Facts. Never forget when the streets were basically empty. Not many homeless people. No people walking around. Barely any cars on the road. Everything felt empty. For me it was personal. We had been in lockdown and heard my dog got cancer. I couldn't go home to hug him and it really sunk in then. I'm so sorry, / When I wasn't allowed to go to my wife's ultrasound appointments anymore when she was pregnant. Some idiot lied about not being sick so everyone else had to pay the price. I think it was around mid-August when my OBGYN office stopped letting my fiance come with me to appointments. He still allowed him for ultrasounds. But that's it. It's made this pregnancy so much more stressful for me. I'm ecstatic to be having my little girl. But I sometimes wish my body would have waited a little while longer before deciding it was ready to make a baby. When my employer started taking safety measures. This is a massive corporation that exclusively focuses on making money. And they started doing things that actively agitate the customers. You know it's bad when the 1% is scared. Hey PSSST. Please subscribe and like.